people will not, by default, it's not natural, it doesn't come easy. They won't take the time to just dream. It's just dreaming. It's just it's time blocking to turn your phone off, to say no to distractions, email, text messages, phone calls, go somewhere, to the river, to a hotel, to a restaurant, to a park, and just think and dream. If I'm celebrating next year, December 31st, it's the best year of my life. What has happened? And then just journal about what makes you excited. It's not human nature, it's not natural, and it's very challenging in today's over-connected world for people to do that. And so instead, they remember their past, and they think their past determines their identity. In reality, your identity is just the recurring story that you tell yourself about who you are. Well, is the recurring loop that you tell yourself based on your past, or is it based on who you want to become?
Everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here today. I have a great guest who's going to help us through the world of personal development and business building. And his name is Wyatt Graves. And he is a self-described regular small-town guy from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But he's also a visionary, an entrepreneur, and a coach who has built a number of successful businesses ranging from real estate to education to personal development. And his podcast, The Mentee, is a top 1% global podcast where he interviews world-class mentors who provide powerful insights into business and life. And throughout all of his businesses and pursuits, there's a clear connection to what Wyatt does. He is committed to helping people become the best versions of themselves. And we're going to dive deep today. So thanks, Wyatt, for joining me today.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here, man.
I'm really, I really appreciate it because I'm really inspired by stories from people like yourself, where you have this humble attitude about yourself and very, and so call yourself a small town guy from Baton Rouge. Where now can you kind of talk about your origin story, like where you came from, how you came to want to start a lot of different businesses and start helping people? Can you kind of give us a little background on that?
The biggest memory that stands out is I was 14 years old. My mom was working in a big corporate office, a high-rise downtown Baton Rouge, and I went for the day to work with her, and they gave me a student job, which was to, this is a big, an association that represented the chemical industry in Louisiana. And so all of their members were plant managers in the petrochemical area or space, and they needed to send out a mail out. Now this is, probably 1994, was 14 years old. I didn't drive at the time. So I rode with her and spent all day printing out letters, running them through a folding machine so they'd be folded, and then stuffing envelopes and then putting the labels on the envelopes. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I will never, if there's anything I can ever do in my job career, I will never work in an office. This is the most boring, just miserable job of just doing the same thing over and over again. So that was my first taste, really, of knowing that I didn't want to do the same thing over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Second memory that stands out is fast forward. I was riding a bus really around the same time. It was my freshman year of high school. And I was at a red light in Watson, the little small city where my school was located. And I saw this new car come across the intersection while we were waiting at the red light. And it was, at the time, I thought it was just the finest car I'd ever seen. And it was a black Nissan Altima with a gold trim package. And it just stood out for whatever reason. I thought it was a big, fine car, right? And so I asked a couple of my friends, y'all, look at that car. That's a fine car. And it happened to be a mom to one of the people that was on the bus. And so I said, well, what does she do? And she said, well, she's a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And that stuck. And it never left me. Wow, she's a real estate agent. She's driving right in the community. She's not at an office, and she's obviously making good money because the car is fine. And I need to be a real estate agent. Fast forward, I graduated high school, went to Northwestern State University in Natchitoches Parish, Louisiana. And the place that I studied my freshman year was next to a real estate brokerage. It was on Front Street. And this is before Realtor.com, before Zillow, and all the things that bring houses to the consumer directly. So they would advertise with Polaroid pictures and descriptions of the houses on their storefront window. So as I would walk to the coffee shop to study for class, I would see this brokerage and all of the properties that they had for sale, and it just the desire to be involved with real estate really never left. And being driven to be somebody someday, to hurry up and make money, hurry up and get a job, I decided that I would transfer back to LSU, move home, and become a real estate agent. And that's what I did. And so I got my real estate license that summer in between Northwestern and LSU, became a licensed agent at 19. And man, the one other big thing that I would say that really influenced my world is that in 1995, that around that same season of life, my mom finally left that corporate job where she was just like an executive assistant that back then got paid probably, I would say, $5 an hour, $6 an hour. And she opened a childcare center in 1995. And for the first time in my family's life, the words paycheck to paycheck went away. And so I saw what that did for my family as a freshman in high school. And I became a real estate agent outside of high school. And based on those two experiences, the car driving across the intersection and the childcare center changing our family's, I guess, financial status, if you will, I became a realtor. And then as I became a realtor, I found a childcare center for sale. And so I bought it.
That's great.
And so everything since then has been not from me looking to the future and asking myself, what do I want? And then reverse engineering. I did the opposite, which is what most people do. They look around them. Where am I today? What do I want to do tomorrow? What are the options in front of me? And they chase those options. And that's what I did for 20 years. That's what I did for 20 years. And then in 2018, I found GoBundance. And that just exposed me to a whole new life of opportunity, of options, of a way to scale a business and not be, working 70, 80 hours a week. Of course, there were lots of hiccups and trials and tribulations in between the time that I got my license in 2018. But nonetheless, really started to change my trajectory and got a lot more involved in actually owning and developing some real estate deals. Shifted my identity, shifted just all kinds of things, and that's where I'm at today.
That's incredible. And one thing that a few things struck me about that introduction, and one of the first things was that we both got our start in a similar way, stuffing envelopes for a chemical company.
Really?
Of some kind. Yeah, mine was my family business was, Hill Brothers Chemical Company. And when you were talking about stuffing envelopes for a chemical association, that's how I started. I actually stuffed envelopes with a specific type of fiber that we were selling as samples for our customers. So I thought that was, and I had the same reaction as you. I do not want to do this for a living.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
That's a key driver. So with regard to I'm really drawn to that idea that your mom left her $5 an hour job as an executive assistant to open a childcare center. Was that kind of a move of passion? Was it how did that transition take place? And well, the story is great and it's so meaningful to me. I don't know if you can see in the background, I've got the mint tea picture there hanging on the wall. Then I've got the man in the arena. And then the next picture is a picture of my grandma. That's a picture of a letter that was typed with a typewriter, I think in 1950. I don't know, 1950. It's in the 1950s. How about that? And then the little small picture at the bottom is a picture of my grandmother in front of a travel trailer. And the reason that I share that as it pertains to mom's starting the childcare center, my grandmother, which was her mom, she was homeless at many times of her life. And she was a traveling carny is what we would say. I guess that's, I hope that's not derogatory, but she traveled with the carnival. Right.
And didn't have a house, didn't have a car. And she stopped at a consignment lot because she saw the little travel trailer for sale. And she negotiated to buy that travel trailer on time with a lot salesperson. She made every payment on time, just as she promised. And then when she paid the last payment, he typed that letter and sent it to her and said, Miss Dorothy, I should have never done that for you because we didn't ever take title to that property. I sold that to you. I shouldn't have. You didn't have an address. You didn't have credit. You didn't have anything. I never registered the papers. I never should have done anything that I did for you, but something about you and your character made me think that I could trust you, and you have delivered. It gives me the chills today. You've delivered on your promise. And let this letter serve as a letter of reference. And we were going through her things after she passed away, or maybe before, and we found the letter. And I just thought, God, what a beautiful testament to my grandmother's resiliency, right? So grandma went from that lifestyle to then managing a trailer park for free rent. And then she was able to save up enough money to buy her own trailer. Then she was able to save up enough money to buy her own piece of land. And then she moved the trailer to the piece of land, and then she was a homeowner, and she didn't owe anybody any money. And then she bought another piece of property and saved up enough money from being an entrepreneur, from being a restaurant owner, an ice cream truck salesperson. This is somebody that financed a set of pots back in the day when she had nothing but a tent and paid 5 cents a week to pay for the pots she would use to cook over an open flame for food. But she was an entrepreneur, man, and she just saved her pennies, and she lived such a frugal life that she was able to start her own rental property. And then that led to another and led to another. And she ended up having, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 or 8 properties. And in that, she bought the land across the street from her. When mom was ready to leave her corporate job and make a change, the only thing she had was that piece of property that my grandmother had owned and some money that my grandma said she could borrow to start a business. So when you looked at the community and you looked at the need and you looked at the location of this land, one of the only things that would work was a child care center. It was not the most commercial piece of property. It wasn't on a busy street at an intersection. It was kind of off the beaten path. And so because that's what the community needed, that's what she did. And the one thing that mom really has never been shy of was working hard. And so she had the cleanest, newest child care center in the town, and it was an instant hit. And that's how she got into the child care business.
That's amazing. And it sounds like too, it was driven through kind of like your family, at least through your grandmother, that this entrepreneurial spirit. Do you think that that's where it was driven from? Yeah.
For sure. No, grandma was, there's stories that grandma would share where she would handwrite poems in calligraphy that she couldn't even read because she never finished the 3rd grade. And her family was homeless, living in a car, but they would have her as the salesperson, and they would go drop her off at cities where she would walk the street of the city and she would peddle the poems. And people would say, and this is one of the stories she shared, I actually have her recorded saying it as a keepsake, but they would tell her that they couldn't read either, so they wouldn't want to buy the poem. And she would say, well, it's okay, let me read it for you. And she would pretend that she was reading it, but really she had memorized it. And that was her way of overcoming an objection to make the sale. And so she would sell copies of those poems. Then she would crochet these little crosses, and she would sell crosses, right? She was just an entrepreneur at heart who was never willing to settle for the status quo. Wow. That's really the bottom line of it. She wasn't happy with the status quo. So she ended up owning a restaurant. Like I said, she owned an ice cream truck and would sell ice cream, all those things. So that had to be programmed, if you will, into my mom. And then I would just say that my situation, my circumstances, the people that I've been around shaped me, right, into wanting to be somebody, air quote, big someday. And the only thing that ever impressed me as a viable option to be somebody big someday was to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted anybody to be in control of my time or my income. And thus entrepreneurship was the route that I decided to go.
Did you learn that lesson through watching people like your grandmother and your mom? Because you mentioned going that switch that flipped from when your mom left the hourly job where it was paycheck to paycheck, and then it was no longer paycheck to paycheck. Was that perceived by you to be like a comfortable switch? Was it uncomfortable? Were there sacrifices you had to make during that time?
Man, growing up, my parents lived paycheck to paycheck, and we had a support system of my grandmother, her sister, and my other set of grandparents. And I was always aware of their support, always aware of that, we wouldn't have what we had if it would have been for those grandparents supporting us. I would say that, the way I tell the story, Adam, is when there were arguments in my family's household, they were around money. And what I've come to learn as a coach and as a self-development geek, I guess, is what I would say, just kind of obsess over it, is that we learn in one of three ways: by the word spoken to us, the experiences that we have that shape us, and then the behaviors that are modeled before us. And so if you look back on my upbringing, you can see that the words spoken around me, the experiences I had, and the behaviors modeled weren't always the most positive, right? Sure. And so as a young kid, feeling whatever the feeling is, shame, embarrassment, humiliation, unworthiness, all the things that happen as kids are growing up, you don't necessarily have the cognitive ability to develop healthy coping mechanisms. So you make them based on your context, right? Well, my context was, I don't want to feel this way. And if my family had money, I wouldn't. So I need to go out and have money so I don't have to feel this way. Obviously, it doesn't work that way. And I learned that, right, as an adult. But that's what started me in the direction of being solidified. I want to be self-employed. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in control of my destiny, right? And it happened to be supported by the entrepreneurship in my grandma and my parents with the Child Care Center.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I can certainly relate to a lot of that idea of the feeling of shame and things like that based on, I love what you talked, the words, the experiences, the behaviors that are modeled before you. And so kind of moving forward, do you think that it was something that when you got driven to get into real estate, to kind of pursue that entrepreneurial spirit on that front, seems like you had two driving forces. You had that force of, I want what the person with that Nissan Altima has, that level of freedom. And there was also this thing you were running from, which was, I don't want that scarcity and that, that the behaviors that we're fighting from, that shame, that feeling, and the way to get that is, what do you think was driving you the most, if that makes sense? And was there right or wrong, or
I was running to more than I was running from. I didn't recognize or even realize at the time what I was running from. My focus was, very transparently, at that stage of my life, I wanted to be rich. I was chasing money. I was chasing wealth. I remember having my first home that I bought, and I had put in an in-ground pool. And you have to understand, like, the time that I grew up, people that had an in-ground pool were rich.
Yeah.
We never had a pool, right? So if you had a pool or a 2-story house, like, you were rich. And so I still associated being rich with that, those materialistic things. And so I bought a house, I put in a pool. I had 12-foot palm trees, which at the time seemed like a big deal, imported from Florida, to plant around the pool. And then I went and bought a BMW 5 Series. I'll never forget the day, because it speaks to what you're saying and what we're talking about, which is self-worth and worthiness. And validity. Anyway, I went and bought the BMW and I came home. I didn't show it to anybody. I didn't stop by anybody's house, but I came back to my house and I parked it in my garage, kind of cockeyed, right? Like crooked, right? Like
Right.
it couldn't be more arrogant. And then I went back in the backyard and got in the pool and just floated around and literally thought to myself, man, I have made it. I have arrived. I've made it. This is just, life is so good.
Yeah.
And it was good for a minute until it wasn't. And you know, maybe I could have learned it without being there, but it took me experiencing that to discover that that's not it. That it doesn't matter what you have, what kind of house you live in. It doesn't matter how much money you make. Worthiness doesn't come from material possessions, right? So I didn't know that I was running from that, choosing the real estate career and the childcare career. I chose real estate specifically because I could have an adult job without a degree. And I didn't have to have certain hours, so I could still go to college, get my degree and such. But this has been a journey, and I would tell you that I'm still on the journey. I haven't arrived still, and I don't know that I ever will. Right? It's a never-ending journey of self-discovery and sitting in all the feelings and the mindsets and the thoughts that come through your mind as you are trying to fulfill your purpose.
And that's I think it's interesting you say that, because it seems like that's like the time where you do figure out that you make it is when you discover that you're never really arriving. You're always on the journey. And that journey is like that's where the appreciation happens. And so that moment that you are kind of sitting in the pool, and that I can relate to moments in my own life where it's like, yeah, I got everything I wanted. The moment lasts like 15 seconds, then you're on to whatever's next. And so you seem to figure that out. How old were you when that happened, by the way?
Oh man. Young 20s, early 20s. Yeah. So I might have been 22-ish.
Yeah.
21, 22.
Yeah. And did your path to continued success, like at least in a material way, did that continue, or did you have some ups and downs? Did you go through any kind of
yeah, for sure. I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I bought a childcare center in 2001, October of 2001. I bought my childcare center. I was still selling real estate, bought a childcare center, and then graduated college in 2002. And I thought, well, wow, right? Because when I bought my first school, I started making a consistent $10,000 a month plus real estate sales. And that was more money than my family had ever come into, right? So it's like a big deal. So I thought, well, if one school makes this much money, then two schools would make 20, three would make 30. And that just didn't prove to be the case, right? We built some new schools and bought an existing school that was going under from some alleged child abuse, things like that. But I was a mover and a shaker back then, and everybody knew that Wyatt was this young, hungry entrepreneur, right? So young to have so much. He's got it going on. So they would call me with deals. I didn't have mentors, really. I didn't have I didn't have a posse to bounce things off of. This was all Wyatt's doings. And so I grew too big too fast. And I was financing all of this childcare business with my real estate sales. And real estate was great until it wasn't. And so I experienced the 2008 recession. 2008, 9, 10 were some of the hardest years ever. And tried to hang on, tried to withstand the storm. Was, showing up at banks, knocking on the door, talking to the presidents of the bank, saying, "Hey, can we renegotiate the loan?" Giving up leases. It was just a lot, and hit rock bottom between 2010 and 2012. Very long 2 years of being a self-employed entrepreneur on an island. Started to overcome that deficit in 2013, 14, 15, started to come back out of it, right? restructured a lot of things, rebuilt after we had cut back, this, that, and the other. And then in 2016, we were going to have a record year in real estate sales, and it rained for 21 days straight in South Louisiana. And all of our ditches, rivers, and lakes filled up. They could not handle any more water, and it kept raining. And 100,000 houses and buildings flooded in my hometown, including my personal house, several of my schools, just about all of the real estate that we had at the time. And none of it was covered with flood insurance. And so that was the second time that I had my knees, cut off out from under me. And 2017, 18, you can't help but think, well, God dog, I'm made for this. I'm made for a problem. And this is just another iteration of it, right? It's not going to get me down. And so I took a job for the first time ever in 2017 with my neighbor. It's his business. He was incredible. It was an awesome opportunity. And it was in that space that I met Jeff Woods, eventually, who is the founder of the Mint Tea, which is the podcast that I have. He was teaching goal setting. And so I went to a goal setting retreat with him and met Jay Papasan, met Adam Edison, met Deborah Cornelius, and all these other people who invited me to a mastermind in January of 2018. There I met Justin Donald and John Vroman. They introduced me to David Osborne, who introduced me to GoBundance, and my world has been changed ever since. So it is not a straight line. It was not all up. It's a lot of curves, divots, a lot of emotional lessons learned, strains. I've, had coaches, therapists, arguments, all the messiness is part of my story. It ain't all sunshine and whatever the saying is, sunshine and butterflies or something. But no, it wasn't always, it wasn't a straight path, and it wasn't easy.
Definitely not. And yeah, so you and I are both members of GoBundance, which we found probably around, well, you found it sounds like 2018. I was more of like the 2020 cohort, but that's it is a game changer. But before that, I kind of want to go back, if you don't mind, because this is, flow over fear part. I like to kind of get into the ideas of like what rock bottom looked like for you, and how you navigated that process to have the resilience to come back out of it. So what did rock bottom look like for you?
People have asked me that in the past, and it's a hard question to answer because I didn't know that I was in rock bottom until I wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. Until it got better. So to me, I've had a lot of iterations of challenges, both inside of my personal family. With my parents, they got divorced. Our business was we were all in partnership at the time. So it was a business breakup. It was a parental breakup, and I didn't agree with the divorce. And then my mom has been in and out of recovery as an addict. So that was a challenge, considering she was my business partner. Mm-hmm. Of all the podcasts I've done, I've never had the animal stuck in the room. But,
surprisingly, I've had it a couple of times where guests have had that. I don't know if maybe it's me. Maybe
I didn't know that she was even in here. She never even comes downstairs. It's my daughter's cat. So anyway, so I didn't know that I was in rock bottom until I was out of it, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, I would tell you that I'm 42 now. Looking back, I'm in a much better place today. Like today, I'm in a much better place than I've ever been, financially, physically, spiritually, just in a lot of relationally with, I've got a wife and 3 great kids, and we have a dream life. We really do. We have my dream life. How about that?
Yeah.
But I think I struggle more today with, periods of mindsets that are not fun, not exciting, right? Like I have to physically change my physical state of being so that I can have the mental state that I desire. I never had to do that in the rock bottom years, right? Like it was never even an option, really. So what was my rock bottom like? How did I keep going? I mean, giving up was never even an option. It never crossed my mind. Giving
Mhm.
up was never an option. Throwing in the towel was never an option. Stopping was never an option. If I would say anything, I am an eternal optimist, and I am going to. I've always been, and I hope it don't ever change. Think that I can do whatever I want to do. Right. So, and I was listening to Earl Nightingale this morning uh, share Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich story. And in that little episode or whatever it was, I got to go back and listen to it. But I think he said that if you have the desire to do something, then it means it's possible. Like you can't have a desire that's not possible. I got to go back and re-listen to that, but maybe that's why being at the rock bottom for me was never and giving up was never an issue, right? Like okay, what do I have to do to get out of this? Okay, what do I have to do to get out of this? I think the biggest difference between then and now with pressures of life and pressures of performance is that I have a wife and kids.
Yeah.
And they have a lifestyle that they're accustomed to, that if I don't do things right, it don't stay. And so and they have goals and they have dreams and desires, and it's up to me to help bring those to fruition. And so having that pressure and the, I guess, the awareness that they could become disappointed is it's uneasy for me to have that, right? So I think that might be the difference between now and then, but it was never an option. I never knew I was in the rock bottom until I was not. And then looking back, and even today, right, like 42, listening to another podcast this morning, people talking about the wisdom that they have after traveling the journey. Man, I don't really remember a lot of the valleys. I mean, I have to think about them. I have to sit and consciously try to recall the negative moments, the bottom days, because I don't wear them. It's something of the past, and my whole purpose this morning of trying to think about them was to learn from them, to make sure that I don't repeat those mistakes, as we're in a wonky market right now, and we're still buying multifamily, and we're still selling houses. I'm still advising builders and developers on what to do, and banking on those things, selling and being successful. And I don't want to repeat the same mistakes that we had in 2008 and 9 and subsequent years. So anyway, I don't know. That's a long answer to your short question.
No. That's perfect. And I'm glad you mentioned it like that. And something struck me that you just said too, with regard to how you think about the past. And it's something I've been reflecting on a lot lately too, is kind of how we travel through time, how we think about the past, how we think about the future. We tend to, at least from my perception, a lot of people, their default is to really dwell on the past, like dwell on the negative experiences they've had, and dwell on like what should have changed, how I should have done something different, how I did this different, or they obsess about the future, about like what I want to become, whether I want to do what, whatever. And then they neglect the present. But the way you frame that by saying that you kind of just looked at the past intentionally to look at those look at the lessons you could learn, I think that's really powerful, because if we can reflect on the past and visualize the future, with intention, I think that's where we're able to be more present. Do you feel that that's true, or do you feel like there's some other way of looking at that?
I think that the area of psychology that I like and that I lean towards is the notion that when you get a vision of what you want your life to look like, it's that vision that pulls you through rather than your past pushing you forward, right? So when you have a vision, your vision pulls you forward versus your past pushing you forward. I think that if you want to change your past, then you have to change your future, because today will be my past. So if I want to change the story of my past, then I have to change what I want to do tomorrow. I have to get clear on what I'm going to, like, I'm going to create my past by creating tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Which, right, if I had a little whiteboard, I could show you that today is Tuesday. So I can change my past as of Thursday by changing my tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow will be past on Thursday. So you have to be intentional about what you want your future to be like so that you can be, do, and then have. One of my favorite sayings is most people are tethered to their past because it's easier to remember your past than it is to imagine your future.
Mm.
And that's so true. I mean, you and I were visiting this morning. I'm leading my mentorship mastermind community around a one-page plan that describes what success looks like for 2024. And we've been doing it for 2 months, and we still don't have completed one-page plans. Why don't we have completed one-page plans? Because people will not, by default, it's not natural, it doesn't come easy. They won't take the time to just dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's just dreaming. It's just thinking. It's time blocking to turn your phone off, to say no to distractions, email, text messages, phone calls, go somewhere, to the river, to a hotel, to a restaurant, to a park, and just think and dream. If I'm celebrating next year, December 31st, it's the best year of my life. What has happened?
Mm-hmm.
And then just journal about what makes you excited. It's not human nature. It's not natural. And it's very challenging in today's overconnected world for people to do that. And so instead, they remember their past and they think their past determines their identity. In reality, your identity is just the recurring story that you tell yourself about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is the recurring loop that you tell yourself based on your past, or is it based on who you want to become? And if you stop and think enough about what you want your future to be like, then you can write an identity statement based on your future. And then you can start rehearsing that, and that's how you change your identity. So once you change here's the thing. Your past is always evolving. Every time you learn something new, every time you have a new experience, then you see your past differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your past is really a fluid thing, right? Like, while things may have happened, the more you learn and experience life, the more you can look back and say, well, you know what? I always thought that happened because of this, but that's really not what it was. And I also believe that life happens for me and not to me. And so everything that's happening, I'm really not in control, Adam. You're not in control. We might think we're in control, but we're not. And so when you really embrace that mindset, then the things of your past really become something that serve you.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's such a great point that our past is fluid, like that we can even change our perspective on the past, on what has happened, and learn from it. And that's pretty powerful. And I noticed the book that you had in the background too, 10X is easier than 2X.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a great book. That is that one of your new favorites for that philosophy too?
Well, I found Ben Hardy in 2018. So 2018, I found Ben Hardy and I found Jeff Woods. And I've been a product and a student of both of those guys since then. So the first book that I read from Ben was, I think, Willpower Doesn't Work, which is really works in tandem with The One Thing, which was what Jeff was teaching back then. But then my favorite work that Ben has done is Personality Isn't Permanent. It's a phenomenal book. I don't like the title really because it doesn't do the guts of that book justice. That book is deep, dense, saturated with a bunch of nuggets for anybody that's struggling with identity and depression and goal setting and just experiencing joy in life. And so the title just doesn't do it justice. That's my favorite book that he wrote. And then you can see the progression of his work, right? Through Who Not How, 10X is easier than 2X, and whatever the other one was. I can't remember the third one, The Gap in the Gain.
Yeah.
But he asked a great question, right? And he says, if you want to 10X your life, then 80% of who you are has to change.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that? How do you change 80% of what you do? And that goes back to the success formula, right? When you get clear on what you want to accomplish, who you want to become, the very next thing that you got to do is change the people that you're hanging around, because you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that came from Jim Rohn, and I believe that. And then the next thing is you got to change your environment to support the behaviors that are conducive to the activities that need to be done to bring your future into the present, right?
Right.
And then outside of that, it's community. So 10X is easier than 2X. When you get clear on what you want to do, you got to change 80%. That is your people, it's your routines, it's your habits. And most people are ridden by fear of what people are going to say, what people are going to think. What if they don't respond to the text, the email, they cut off the relationship, and then they stay tethered to that old version of themselves, and then they become what Bronnie Ware says is a statistic that says, you know what? The number one wish of the people that are near death is that they wished they'd had the courage to live the life they really wanted instead of the life they thought everybody else expected them to have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're faced with, right? So that's why I love the podcast that I run. That's why I love the community, because I get to teach these principles to people and see real change.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great segue into your coaching side of it. And because you've evolved this, great career of ups and downs, and ultimately over the long term, lots of success with these organizations, lots of success with the learning centers and things like that. What was it that drove you to want to help other people and coach people in that way?
I say this, there's probably two, well, I'm going to tell you one answer. I'm going to tell you another answer. The one answer is that I'm a complete wreck. So the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Yes.
And so when teaching people this one-page plan, I have to study the content. I have to be prepared to go lead other people. And if I want to walk with integrity, then I have to do it myself. So it's a forcing function for me to be disciplined and for me to create the habits to achieve extraordinary success, because I'm still driven to go achieve extraordinary success. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't know why I like helping people. It's just kind of like a God-given gift. I like encouraging people. I like motivating people. I find it easy. I find it. I have a gift of articulating and seeing things in like compartmentalized ways, and then communicating it in a way that's easy to understand. And I would say that I'm, part of the air quote gift that I have, which is helping people feel good about themselves, is because I'm unattached. I've been able to grow personally so that I'm unattached to earning somebody's friendship from sugarcoating something or from manipulating something, right? Like, I believe what will be, what is. I don't have control anyway. So I'm able to kind of show up in a more raw, vulnerable way to people with, kind of no skin in the game. Like, I'm good. I'm going to be good. And I'd love for you to be good. And this is what I think, right, that you could do to help overcome whatever challenges that you have. And I like to share that. Over the years, I have a great connection, or a great network, and can connect people with resources. And I love doing that. So from a selfish way, it makes me feel good to see other people succeed and to see other people win. So I like that. I also need to win. So it forces me to stay true to the models and the format that we share. Yeah. And then I would say the third piece, which is really maybe evolving, Adam, to become a primary role, is I'm on a mission to build an empire. And I can only build the empire as big and as good as the people that I recruit and attract to come help me. And so I look at the good life, which is the little phrase that I say all the time, right? I'm helping people live the good life. Well, what is the good life? Well, the good life is whatever you intentionally choose for your life, not your circumstances, not your past, not the people around you, but it's the life that you deliberately and intentionally choose to be the life that you want to live. Whatever that is, it's your good life. And I'm on a mission to help people do that. Well, we live in a Newtonian world in the Western civilization where it takes money to make the world go round. And that means people have to have a job. And I am on a mission to build an empire where our partners and our employees and our realtors and all the people that live in our world, that work in our world, can use their job as a tool for them to live the good life. So I'm creating a culture that is based on personal growth and development of our employees, our vendors, our partners, our realtors, our loan officers, our title clerks, our subcontractors, our childcare providers, for them to get what they want outside of work by having a job that supports a mission beyond just their 9 to 5. So sharing that personal growth and development format, those tools and things like that is helpful in that space as well.
And so with the coaching that you're working through now and how you're coaching people, what does that look like? Who is your primary target? Like who are you looking to coach?
It's kind of evolved, Adam. What I would say today is I recognize that a job should be a tool for people to use for their own good life journey. And a lot of times what we find in people and their job is that they don't like their job. Their job isn't serving them in their greater good life mission. And I want to build an empire. I mean, I've really driven. I've got big goals. I'm ambitious. And I can only grow as good and as big as the people that I recruit and attract around me. And so part of what I want to do from a personal passion standpoint is I want to create a workplace culture that understands that our jobs are a stepping stool and a tool for the employees, our partners, our vendors, for them to live their good life. And so I'm creating a culture around asking my employees, what does your good life look like? For you to be celebrating your world next year, what has to happen? And how can we leverage this job, this culture, this community to help you get there? Whether it's a career ladder, whether it's a progression of compensation, a progression of roles, or even if it is, hey, come stay with us for a season. And whenever the season is over with, you go to another place, right? And this was only your job for a season. I'm okay with that too. And so what I'm trying to do through the mentee and through the mentorship community is attract people that could possibly be great talent in our world across the country, to work inside of our network, to be part of our coaching world, whatever it might be, so that we create a community and a network for all of our people to be able to be a resource to each other. That's kind of, if that makes sense, that's what I'm doing. And then I get to share the same content on a weekly basis inside of our company to help grow and develop our employees, which is not normal, right? Most companies do not have coaches on mindset and performance and productivity for their employees on a weekly basis, and we do.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible because because people are spending 8 hours a day at their workplaces, at their jobs, and I mean it becomes their livelihood, if not their lives. And so to give back in that way, not just financially, but also from the perspective of personal development opportunities, that's huge. And it's honestly something I'm looking at doing within our company. And so in addition to kind of that format of internal coaching, do you have any other suggestions or pieces of advice for anybody that's leading a company and wanting to develop their people in that way to be mutually beneficial?
Well, a couple. I recorded a class, an online class that's how to live the good life. And so it's got a bunch of modules that brings them through the clarity session of finding clarity around what you want, upgrading your people, your relationships. You're the average of the 5, create the environment, and then find the community. And then we have a bonus track, which is tools and tips on productivity hacks. So that's like every employee gets their own portal. So it's like every employee is a customer of the online mastermind that I sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have their own portal. Then we have weekly calls. Then we have guest speakers that come in. And then we are exploring a partnership with Joe Moffitt, who offers coaches for one-on-one coaching opportunities for your employees. And
Wow.
he white labels it on behalf of your employee, on behalf of your company. And so I look at that, Adam, as I don't know if you've read the Dream Manager program or Dream Manager book by Matthew Kelly.
I haven't, but it was actually suggested by another guy in my GoPod. So it's the second time I've heard it, so I need to read it now.
Well, yeah, the universe is telling you, man. So the Dream Manager program is phenomenal. I love it. It's right up my alley because it helps get people what they want. It uses their job as leverage for them to live their good life. And so it's basically having an in-house coach or an in-house psychologist. So your employees have somebody to go vent to and bounce ideas off of, but then also create plans for their personal life, right? Like, where do you want to be in a year from now, and how can we help get you there? I think Joe enables us to have a Dream Manager program. And we've done pieces of dream management programs in the past, and it's been phenomenal, right? Dane Espegard is a guy, I don't know that he's in GoBundance, but he wrote a book. I can't remember the name of it, but he's a dream manager also. And he can come in and do dream storming sessions, both 3 hours or 6 hours. So I'm hoping to have him in our world at the beginning of next year so that we can have a dream storming session and I'm going to call it a clarity camp with all of our employees, not just leaders. And then we're going to invite the community to come participate with us, because if we're doing it for our employees, we might as well, let's just open it up to everybody, right? And share with our community who we are on the inside. So an online course, the portal, Dane, Joe, those kind of things I think are what is necessary to help make a healthy work culture.
I love that. That's huge. And so before we close it out here, and I want to share with everybody that if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to join your mastermind, they can find that at the mentee.com/MMC. Is that right? And
that's right. Mentee.com/MMC. And we've got different programs there. I've got one. I've got a special that I'm running right now. You sign up, it's $99 a month. And we've got guest speakers that come on. We talk every Tuesday right now. After the first of the year, we'll go to twice a month. But we'll have coaching on one session and we'll have a guest speaker on the other, and sometimes in between. But it's a great community of people that are like-minded who are all striving for each other to get what they want.
That's amazing. That sounds incredible. And so, if you're listening to this and you want to get involved in that, then go to thementee.com/MMC and you'll find all that information there. And what's next for Wyatt Graves? You want to build an empire. What does that look like? What does your 10X jump look like to you?
The next iteration of the vision is to really focus on scaling our rentals and our holds with multifamily, build-to-rent community, and trailer parks. So we're building the machine right now for deal flow and financing. So it's to scale that, and we're going to scale that by building a fund. I've got lots of notes, all the things, all the details there to help me build a fund. And so the goal is to launch the fund by the end of the year and 2023, and go into 2024 with the fund and the machine to capture the deal flow. And we've got the underwriter that's already secured. We've got the brokers that are secured. We've got the management system, the operation. We're managing about 105 doors right now, which is our first year to start. But we're in new construction. We're building some new developments, things of that nature. So the next iteration is to really scale our rental portfolio and the fund so that we can go from just scaling the multifamily to also then acquiring ancillary businesses that support new construction and that support the holds, whether it's pest control, plumbing, HVAC, maintenance, we're going to do some acquisitions and bring those guys in-house as well.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on all of your success, on all the lessons you've learned, and the service that you're bringing to the world. I know you mentioned that it's that there's some level of self-serving to that, but I think there's a lot of power in the idea that we create win-wins in this world, and you're creating win-wins where everybody wins because you're teaching them, you're providing that mentorship, and you're serving on a higher level. So thank you for that, Wyatt. And if people want to reach out to you, in addition to the mentee.com/MMC, where else can people find you?
You know what's funny, Adam? I give out my cell phone number. You know why? Because nobody ever calls. So it's kind of like every time I'm a guest on a podcast now, it's kind of like this. It's like this really vulnerable, like someday somebody's going to call and they're going to share it with everybody and it's going to blow up. So it's just kind of fun to test the listenership of every podcaster to see who's interested and who wants to have a free 30-minute just mentorship call, right? I got nothing. I mean, if you want to buy, great. I have something to sell, but I don't sell. If you want it, you're going to buy it. If you don't, it's all good. The right people buy at the right time. My cell phone's 225-235-7223. Shoot me a text and we'll hop on a call. And if you want my email, it's Wyatt@thementee.com.
All right. Well, we're going to include that in the show notes. So prepare to be bombarded.
I love it. I'm ready.
Awesome. No, that's, well, I appreciate that, Wyatt. And I thank you for your time and your energy here. And yeah, if you want to reach out to Wyatt, go to his website or connect with him on a cell phone call for 30 minutes.
There you go.
All right. But thanks for being here, Wyatt. And to everyone out there, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important community and mentorship is to living a life of abundance above your fears. If you want to connect with me, hear about new offerings, episodes, and strategies to live with conviction, courage, and clarity, then sign up for my newsletter now. It's a way to stay connected to me outside of social media and bring a little empowerment to your inbox, and maybe a few dad jokes here and there. Sign up now at adamcliffordhill.com. Now back to the show. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.